Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing fantastic today. My name is Emily and welcome to my new filming setup. So yes, I have moved places. I am in a new room now. Most of you know that I started a PhD this month, so I was moving for that. So I'm figuring out a few things still, like lighting. The lighting I was using in my old place belonged to my housemate and I have left that with him now, and now I'm left to my own devices. I am once again at the mercy of natural light. So I may or may not get a new light box of my own in the future. I don't know. It depends how reliable my window is. I also haven't entirely set up my room yet, so it looks a bit plain at the moment. So today we're going to be talking about all of my reading goals and plans for 2021. Last year I did 20 books that I wanted to read in 2020. I generally did pretty well. I think I read pretty much everything on that list except for the Prose Edda. This year I'm going to do it a little bit differently because there are both a series of books that I want to continue and also individual books I want to read. And also I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that these plans could change, my interests could change. I could also add on books throughout the year. So we're going to have 3 different sections in this video. We're going to have a series that I want to start, series I want to continue/finish, and then individual books I want to read. So I'm going to get the shortest section out of the way, and those are series that I want to start. The first series I want to start in 2021 is the Thrawn trilogy. I started reading Star Wars books last year, and I've been really wanting to get into the literary universe of Star Wars. I'm a huge fan of the Star Wars universe. I love most of the films, and of course I've been getting into the novelizations as well. And recently I've been wanting to get into the Legends universe of Star Wars. So those were all of the books that were essentially decanonized when Disney came in and started their own new canon. So if you've watched a lot of my videos where I mention Star Wars, you know I'm not the hugest fan of the Disney canon at all. I was not a huge fan of the sequel trilogy, so that has given me a bad taste when it comes to the new canon. I like certain new canon books, like the Padme Amidala books that recently came out. I've been interested in those. I also like the Darth Vader comics by Charles Soule, and I think the new Vader series that's been coming out this year. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of where, say, Luke Skywalker's path goes after Return of the Jedi in the new Disney canon. I'm not a huge fan of any of that in general. So I want to get into Legends this year, and the premiere book trilogy in the Legends universe is the Thrawn trilogy. So we pick up after Return of the Jedi and we follow Luke on his adventures, Leia and Han in their married life, and the kids that they have together. Yeah, in Legends they have a whole other set of children, and there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens with them. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading that and forming my own Star Wars headcanon. Next up, I also want to start Dark Artifices by Cassandra Clare. Of course, this is contingent on me finishing the Mortal Instruments series, which I will get to in the next section. But yeah, I've just been wanting to get into the Shadowhunters universe. It's just a fun world to be in. I know that it's not super highbrow or anything, but I really enjoy it. And along with that is the Last Hour series. I think the first book is Chain of Gold, which I have on Audible. I know I don't have to read Mortal Instruments to read that. I read Infernal Devices already, so I think that's good enough to start that series. So yeah, those 2 Cassandra Clare series I'm hoping to start in 2021. Now on to the series I want to continue and or finish. The first series, of course, I mentioned earlier, the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. I was going to read the penultimate book last December, but things happened and I did not. So I'm currently still reading it right now. I think I'm about 34% of the way through. So yeah, definitely a series I'm hoping to finish and must finish before I read Dark Artifices. The next series I think I can finish this month actually is the Kingdom on Fire series by Jessica Cluess. I only have 1 book left in that series, and it's A Sorrow Fierce and Falling. Basically in that series you have a bunch of eldritch creatures coming into and attacking Victorian England, and we have our main character Henrietta, who is training to be a sorcerer. The background on why she is a sorcerer and why she does have magical powers is a little bit complicated complicated, and that's a mystery that's being unraveled throughout the series. And there's also a bunch of love triangle, love quadrangle stuff going on that I'm not as interested in, so hopefully I'll finish that soon. Next, I want to finish the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. This is about a girl called Vasilisa who grows up in medieval Russia. She has the ability to see the local spirits around her, the local nature spirits, and she has a very complicated relationship with a winter demon. I just finished The Girl in the Tower like 2 days ago, and it was amazing, so I'm really hoping to get my hands on the last book soon. I think the last book is called The Winter of the Witch, and that is a great title, so yeah, I really want to read it. Next up is the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. This is a massive epic fantasy series that has been the topic of much discussion on BookTube. I have only read The Way of Kings, and there is a reason I've only read one book. Those books are commitments of time. I've heard great things about the first 2 books. I've heard mixed things about the 3rd and 4th book. The 4th book, Rhythm of War, I think just came out. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what I feel about these books, where I fall on that spectrum. I've definitely come to respect Brandon Sanderson as an author over the past few years. He's not like my favorite author or anything. I don't think he's the best thing for fantasy since sliced bread or anything, but I do really respect his world building. He's always very impressive, and I think his character work in the Stormlight Archive is better than it is in the Mistborn trilogy. That's a series I finished last year. So yeah, looking forward to reading this and then discussing with my other BookTube friends. Also in epic fantasy, I want to continue the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I reread The Eye of the World last year, and it was kind of fun. Maybe not the most groundbreaking thing I had ever read, but still a solid book. Of course, Daniel Green has talked about this series a ton on his channel. Other fantasy reading friends of mine have talked a lot about this series and said great things about it. I myself read the first 3 books when I was 12, and I don't think I absorbed everything at the time. I know I enjoyed the books, but I don't think I took it all in or was even able to analyze all of it properly. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going back to this series with a fresh pair of eyes. The next series I really want to continue is the Magicians series by Lev Grossman. I don't know if that's the proper name of the series, but that's how I know it. It's the name of the show on Sci-Fi, so that's how I know it. I read the first book and I actually really liked it. I was bracing myself to hate it when I read this book because I'd heard so many like bad to sort of mediocre things about it, so I thought, oh well, I'm not gonna like it as much as I like the show. But I surprised myself. I actually really enjoyed it. Certainly the pacing isn't as breakneck as it is in the show, but I thought it was a very interesting look at mental health issues. I thought it was a very interesting take on academia and how some things just don't change just because magic is in the picture. I think it's also an interesting way of looking at how we as humans seek satisfaction and excitement from everything, but eventually even those exciting things we were looking forward to, they actually have their own mundane aspects. Even if you're learning magic, you still have to struggle the same way you would at any other subject. So I really enjoyed the themes of that story. I enjoyed the world building, and even if I didn't love the characters, I thought they were still interesting to read about. So yeah, when I finished that book, I was like, yeah, I want to read the next book. The next series I want to continue is the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. Basically, this takes place in an alternative Regency England during the Napoleonic Wars, where dragons are used in aerial warfare. The main character is Captain Lawrence, and he is drawn into the Dragon Corps after his ship finds a rare dragon's egg, which hatches a rare dragon. The dragon immediately bonds with Captain Lawrence as his rider, so he's drawn into the world of dragon warfare. So there's a lot of really interesting fantasy aspects of this world, like how dragons are used, how different dragons with different functions are used in what way. But the center of this series is the relationship between Captain Lawrence and his dragon, whom he calls Temeraire. Temeraire is basically a giant puppy, and Captain Lawrence just like showers all of his love and affection onto this dragon, and it's great. And it's very simple in a way, but in a sense, that's all you really need to hold the story together. And we did have a lot of revelations in the first book about Temeraire's origin, so really looking forward to digging more into that stuff. Next up is the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. I think I read the first book, City of Brass, for a tome topple last year. I can't remember now. But the last book, Empire of Gold, came out last year, so pretty recently, and everyone was raving about it. Everyone has been pushing the series in my face and telling me to read it, so I gotta read it. And the first book was pretty good, so I'm not against it at all. The world building is great. There's lots of djinn, lots of interesting magic, a lot of complicated court politics, a lot of different factions, which kind of confused me when I was first reading this book. And we left our characters in a very precarious place at the end of book 1, so we'll see how the heat turns up in Kingdom of Copper. Next up is the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. So if you've seen my top books of 2020 list, you know that Jade City was on that list. Basically, this series is like an Asian fantasy Godfather with some wuxia elements. So the setting of this book is a city that's kind of inspired by a mishmash of Shanghai and Hong Kong. There is a big crime family presence in this city, and the coveted substance in question is jade, which when worn can give you lots of enhanced abilities. And there are some interesting rules around who can wear and use jade, who has the predisposition to use jade, and if you don't have that predisposition, what you can use in order to use jade. So there's an interesting economy around this substance, and we focus on one of these crime families as they're gearing up for a full-blown war, essentially, with another crime family. At its heart, this story is a family story, and that's just what I love about a lot of crime fiction, a lot of mafia fiction, is that a lot of them come down to a lot of these really complicated and nuanced personal relationships. Definitely watching the family dynamics shift in the first book was one of the most rewarding aspects of reading this story. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how things evolve in Jade War. I heard that that book is really good, so we'll see. The next series I want to read, or rather reread, is the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. So I read the first book, 5th season, back in 2017 when I was in transition to moving to the UK. I think just because I was in a transitional phase and I was really distracted, I didn't really appreciate the book properly. So I'm hoping to, again, like with Wheel of Time, revisit this series with a pair of fresh eyes and actually appreciate it for the masterpiece it apparently is. So the setting of this world is a planet where there are a lot of natural disasters which are very hard to control and are highly catastrophic. So this world employs these people called Orogenes, who are people with enhanced abilities. They are often called in to control the effects of these natural disasters, but they are also alienated from society. They are often cast outs. So it's a highly intricate world, and I really want to enjoy it and actually appreciate it. So that is another book series goal for 2021. And next up, we're gonna talk about the individual books I want to read in 2021. The first book is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Susanna Clarke, of course, wrote my favorite book of 2020, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. So of course, when it was announced that she was coming out with another book, I was interested. And so far, I've heard great reviews from people whose opinions I trust. I think Marinez really liked it. One of my friends who's a very avid fantasy reader, she really liked it. I have no idea what it's about. I just know that it's really good. So I guess I'm just gonna go in cold. Next up is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I think this is about a girl who grows up kind of a pariah in a very puritanical society. I think one of the blurbs I saw describes this as Handmaid's Tale meets Salem. In any case, I'm always down for any book featuring witches and alienated women, women with powers. That's really my jam. And also in witchy books I want to read this year, I also want to read The Once and Future Witches by Alex Harrow. This is set in 1893 in New Salem, and we focus on a group of sisters, I think. So yeah, a group of sisters, and they join in on the suffragette movement, and that leads them somehow to witchcraft. That concept also sounds really fascinating, and people can't say enough good things about it as well. A lot of people that I watch have loved it. Next up, we have another Naomi Novik book, A Deadly Education. I don't know much about this book either, except that it's supposed to be a fantasy, dark academia type book. I've heard some kind of problematic things about, say, the representation of Indian people in this book. I don't really have the authority to make a judgment on something like that. I need both the context of the story and also the opinions of people who would be knowledgeable on something like this. My general philosophy on something like this is to read the book and then make a judgment on it later. So that's gonna be kind of interesting. I'm just kind of hoping that it's great and amazing like her other books. On a more spiritual note, I want to read the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda this year. I believe the Prose Edda was on my TBR last year and I didn't get around to it. But I've mentioned on this channel a few times that I am a heathen or Norse pagan, and so I know a lot of Norse mythology, but I have not gone to the original sources of these stories. I don't want to be a bad heathen anymore, so I have to read the Prose and Poetic Edda. And last but not least on my 2021 TBR is Mo Dao Zu Xi. This is a xianxia web novel by the writer Mo Xiang Tong Xiu. I think I got the tones totally wrong there. Okay, it's actually Mo Xiang Tong Xiu. I can Chinese real good, yes I can. So Mo Dao Zu Xi was adapted into an amazing C-drama called The Untamed. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I am the biggest fangirl for this C-drama. It was literally the best thing I watched in 2020. I'm totally obsessed now. I am a Wang Xian stan. I can't stop thinking about this show and the characters and the story and all of the feels. So this web novel is basically a Chinese fantasy. It is part of the xianxia genre. Xianxia is basically influenced by Chinese mythology, Taoism, Buddhism. You also have some elements of Chinese martial arts, Chinese folk religion, Chinese medicine. So in the world of this story, we have a lot of cultivator families, and cultivators are essentially the magicians of this world, and they're all in different family clans. And at the center of this story is a gay romance. So of course, because the Chinese government censors any portrayal of gay relationships, it could not be shown explicitly in The Untamed, in the show adaptation. But it was told with such beautiful subtext and with such subtle and nuanced writing that it was almost like the relationship was still there, except we didn't get a lot of explicit bits. But I've heard that the novel is great and is explicit about that relationship. So I'm really looking forward to having this relationship that is, you know, implied over and over again in the show, actually realized in this piece of text. And also reading this text is really weird because there's no publisher for this book. So nobody has picked up the book and formally translated it into English. So a lot of the translations around are fan translations. I think the most read translation is from Exiled Rebel Scanlations. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this book, the source material for my favorite show of 2020, and getting into more Chinese fantasy. So that is it for my 2021 TBR. I am really sorry about exposing all of you to this horrible, horrible lighting. I am aware that I have been slowly turning blue over the course of this video. I promise to figure out the lighting situation at some point. I really don't know how the lighting in this room works yet. So remember to like this video if you liked it. Let me know down below what books you're planning to read in 2021. Remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I am almost at 2,200 subscribers. In the meantime, you can also follow me on Twitter and Goodreads and Instagram, and I will see you in my next video.